Hi there, doing a little impromptu live today, talking about the stages of change model, how to know what stage of change that you're in, and what you can do to help move you along the process of change. So I'm just going to hang out just a second to see if anyone joins. Good morning, good morning. I am talking about the stages of change model. So I did a post earlier this week. So what week are we in? I don't know. We're sometime in September. Space and time is meaning different things. Am I right? About the stages of change model. So if you're trying to make a life change, or you're in the middle of change, or you're struggling to make change, you want to listen in on this or come back and watch the replay. Because I don't think the stages of change model, it's part of a larger psychological model called motivational interviewing, is talked about enough. So a couple of things important to know about change is that it's a process. And yes, we hear this, like change is a process. I've got like this sign on my wall that's, this really cliche saying that I personally found very annoying. So why do I have a sign? Because it is so true that it's about the journey and not the destination. So often we're so focused on that final change or final outcome, we are missing all of the lessons that we're learning along the way. We also have become such this external focused society of productivity and final outcomes as like a value of our worth, a measure of our worth, that we miss all the ways that during the process of change, before we may even see any external changes or outcome, we are already making so much progress. So welcome if you're just joining. If you are trying to make a change or in the middle of change or feeling stuck around change, the stages of change model under the motivational interviewing psychology model may help you to cultivate some more self-compassion. So under the stages of change model or motivational interviewing, change is looked at as a process that begins long before we see an external shift or an external change. The stages of change are pre-contemplative, contemplative, preparation, action, maintenance, and then relapse or recycle, or I like to think of it as new lessons and spiralic healing. So welcome if you are just joining. I'm talking about change today. So I did a post of this again a couple of days ago if you prefer to go back and read through this, but I'm going to talk about how to identify what stage of change that you're in. So it's so important, again, to remember that you may be already in the process of change. The first several stages of change happen in here, and they happen in here. Change starts long before maybe anybody else can see it, or long before there's any kind of external signs that you're making change. Change starts a long time before we see anything on the outside manifest, so to speak. So the first stage of change is pre-contemplative. And at this point, a person is pretty unaware that there's a problem or an issue, or maybe doesn't see a pattern or a way of being, a behavior as problematic. So I focus a lot on helping people to have healthy relationships. So this could be you maybe in the past, probably not if you're watching this right now, where maybe you were going from one unhealthy relationship to another, or you're in a relationship that isn't really healthy or conscious, but there was a long time that maybe you didn't know. And it may be that you just didn't know better. Maybe you grew up with examples of unhealthy relationships. You grew up with dysfunctional relationship and family systems. You didn't have, healthy relationships growing up, and you continue to have one unhealthy relationship after another. And you may not even be aware in the pre-contemplative stage of change that this is a problem, or that there is any other way that you can be, any other thing that you can experience. I remember thinking, even before I got married for the first time in 2007, that, getting married was just something that you did. I was 25. In my Mexican culture, I was already getting pressured by my family to get married because I was a vieja, an old lady. And it was, I was living with my partner. I was the first person in my family to cohabitate before marriage or before pregnancy. And there was just a lot of pressure for me to get married at 25. And I really didn't think that a healthy relationship or this fulfilling, joyful partnership that maybe I saw other people have was possible for me. That's not what I saw growing up. What I saw growing up was that marriage was just something that you did. It was just a box that you check off because that's what, responsible adults and grown-ups are supposed to do. And I was an addict from 16 to 22, like a real, homeless eating out of trash cans, in and out of psych hospitals kind of situation. So I was also feeling a lot of pressure to make up for lost time. So I, not consciously, really out of my old wounds, selected and chose the first person that I married. And I was in that pre-contemplative stage of change, of not knowing that there were any other ways that I could experience a healthy relationship. I saw these healthy relationships in movies sometimes, or maybe other people that I knew had them, but I always felt like, oh, that's nice for them. Like they're had a good family, or they have money, or they're, I don't know, white. So all of these reasons made me believe that marriage was just something that you just did and had to suffer and then you die. Pre-contemplative stage of change. I didn't see the issue that I had already been going from one unhealthy, very toxic relationship to another since I first started dating at 12 or 13 years old. And I continued that through 10 years of my first marriage, till when I left when I was 33. So along that journey, I started to move from pre-contemplative, which is there's no problem, I don't see an issue, or maybe there is a problem, but there's nothing I can do about it, or I don't have any hope, right? Or believe I deserve anything different. So it's just, okay, I'm just going to have to put up with this. And then we move into the contemplative stage of change, which is, oh, maybe there is something else possible. Maybe this is an issue. Maybe this way of being, this pattern that I'm in, these cycles that I'm in, this behavior that I'm participating in isn't healthy. Maybe it's not serving me. Maybe it is problematic. And this could be anything from, how we are feeding ourselves to our relationship with substances. In my example that I'm sharing today, it's about how I viewed relationships. Hey, Psych and Soka, so good to see you. Definitely give that account a follow if you are watching. So I started to wake up as I was going to therapy school myself to become a therapist to what healthy relationships actually were. I didn't even really know what a healthy relationship was until I was going to school to be a therapist to learn how to help other people have healthy relationships. And it just blew my mind. Wow, healthy conscious relationships can give you this. They can help you heal. You can have partnership and fulfillment. They're supposed to feel, safe and secure, and you're not supposed to be tearing each other down all the time. What? And so I moved from pre-contemplative of there's no problem, or I don't see an issue, or I don't have any hope of change, into that contemplative stage of change of maybe I could have a different experience. Maybe something else out there does exist. Maybe, again, there's a healthier way for me to have a relationship. Maybe if it's not relationships for you, it's a healthier way to be in relationship with a substance. right? The Stages of Change model was first founded to help people with substance abuse disorders, but we can really apply these stages of change to any other kind of change we're trying to make. And keep in mind, this all took me the course of a decade that I was changing inside before I made that external change. The process of change happens long before, again, there's any external evidence or that people can see. So I started to move into that contemplative stage of change of like, maybe this is a problem and maybe I can do something about it, but I don't really know. And I started to have that hope and that possibility that maybe I could have a different experience. So if you're watching this live right now, drop some hearts if that's where you're at. If you feel like you're in that contemplative stage of change of something in your life where you're just kind of becoming aware that, you know, whether it's a relationship with substances or food or unhealthy relationship cycles in your life, that you're kind of just becoming aware that maybe there's a different way of being, a different experience that you can have, and are starting to have hope for a new possibility. Thank you. Witnessing you that drop those hearts in this stage of change. So what we can start to ask ourselves in this contemplative stage of change are questions like, how is this, me continuing in this pattern or this cycle serving me? Because sometimes we continue an unhealthy pattern, an unhealthy relationship cycle with substances, for example, because it's serving us in some way. And I know that sounds like, what? No, there's no way that me being in that unhealthy marriage for 10 years was serving me. Right? But what it was serving was for me to continue to play out my childhood wounds, my childhood family of origin dynamics that were trying to heal in that relationship. But that relationship just wasn't safe enough and capable of holding space for those core childhood wounds to heal. If we are in an unhealthy relationship with a type of food or a type of substances, it may be, drinking too much caffeine or drinking too much alcohol, is causing me problems, but it's also helping me wake up and get through the day, or it's also how I connect with other people. It's also how I unwind. So when we're in that contemplative stage of change, looking at how is this pattern or this behavior or this cycle served me? Or what needs am I trying to get met through participating in this? And what are other healthier ways that I can move through this? So if I am, drinking alcohol every night to try to decompress from a stressful day, maybe I can be curious about and start to explore other ways to, decompress, right? Just be curious that there might be other ways. We can also ask ourselves the question of, is this helping me get towards my goals? I'm going to take a quick sip. Speaking of caffeine. So when we are participating in unhealthy patterns, unhealthy cycles, and kind of doing the same thing over and over again, we have to really we can self-reflect and say, is this actually giving me the results I want? Is continuing to engage in this way with these, toxic friends giving me the results I want in my life? Is continuing to engage in this relationship with alcohol or, doom scrolling social media all day, every day, really giving me the results that I want in my life, really moving the needle for me towards my goals or not? And this is, again, no judgment, lots and lots and lots of self-compassion towards ourselves in this stage. Because when we are engaging in patterns and cycles and behaviors that, while they may not be serving us, while they're unhealthy, that's the best that our nervous system knows how to do. And it may be patterns and cycles, things like people pleasing, that we learned how to do in childhood to help us survive, right? And I firmly, firmly believe that we're always doing the best we can with the resources, with the information, with the education, with the safety that we have available to us that we've got. Like, you are doing the best you can today, okay, with what you've got. So once we start moving into well, maybe I can have a different experience. Maybe I do want to release this pattern that's no longer serving me. Maybe I do want to shift my behavior or my relationship. We then move from the contemplation stage to the preparation stage. So the preparation stage is the research stage. So give me some hearts if you're listening to this right now, if you're in that stage. You listening to me talk about this right now, if you've hung out on the live for any point of this or watching the replay, that's preparation. That's exciting. So you are doing research, following therapists on Instagram, on TikTok, maybe reading self-help books you're doing the research. Like, okay, I know this is a problem. I have some hope that I can have a different experience, but I don't really know how to move forward. But I know what I'm doing isn't getting me the results that I want. I am moving into the preparation stage now of starting to do research. Self-help books, maybe doing a self-study course, consuming therapist and coaches content on social media, and starting to make connections. So if you're in this preparation stage of change, congratulations. Again, you may not yet be making any external change. There may not be any change on the outside yet that you can see, and you might be feeling down on yourself. Let that go. Okay, because even just you reading and listening to content like this and consuming things is part of the broader change process. Remember that visible external change that maybe other people can see, that is several steps into the process. I've been talking for a while now. We haven't even gotten there yet, okay? There's all these other stages of change that happen inside before you see the external change on the outside. So congratulations if you are in that preparation stage, and you are doing research and you're making connections and you're understanding what makes you tick or why you do the things you do, or maybe what are some alternative ways that you can relate to substances, or what may have been reasons that led you to have unhealthy cycles of relationships. You're starting to make connections and gain awareness, have some aha moments, and gain some clarity and gain some insight. Okay, so then what moves us from preparation to action is a couple of things. Sometimes there's a hitting bottom moment. Sometimes there's a moment of me continuing on like this in the old pattern, that pain of continuing, it finally is outweighing the pain of change, because change is painful. Letting go of our old patterns, our old coping skills, the ways that we've shown up in relationships, it's hard because it requires us to be introspective. It requires us to move into the next stage, which is action, which is actually, getting a therapist or a coach, or going to a self-help group, or, working with a nutritionist, or actually communicating and setting boundaries, or releasing, a toxic relationship that's no longer serving you. The next step is the action stage, and that is the actual external change stage, where you and maybe other people are going to notice changes, and it is hard. So what we need in that preparation stage, in addition to research and learning, is to build up our support. We need support systems. And if, there's no one in your life that is a supportive, safe person, you, again, may need a self-help group like Codependence Anonymous, Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Parents Anonymous, a therapist or a coach, to give you this sense of co-regulation and safety to help support you in actually taking action. Because when we actually start to take action and set boundaries, or a change I've made in the last month is giving up gluten and dairy, because, and again, this is not saying everyone needs to or anything, but I literally have allergies and hives and reactions in my body when I eat these substances, and I am really bummed out about it. But it finally came to like a hitting bottom moment where I was like, my health and my mental health is crashing and burning, I have to make a change. And getting support to help me continue to implement that, has been so key. So we're always, and as long as you're in a flesh suit and living life, invitations for change are going to keep rolling, y'all. Like in the beginning of our healing journey, we're going to intentionally maybe make some big changes, like changing our relationships, changing our thought patterns, changing our habits, changing our relationship, like the kind of relationships that we have in our life or the people we have in our life. But as long as we are in this body and we are aging, y'all, the changes are going to keep coming. And I had a teacher in undergrad that told me that a top indicator to her of mental health was flexibility. And at the time I was like, I don't get this. And now with time and wisdom, somebody who's approaching 40, I can emphatically say that yes, flexibility and learning how to roll through the process of change and get support to help with change is so, so key. So we move into the action stage finally, right? And we start to make the changes. And this is a hard time because it's new and because our nervous system and our primal brain does not like change. If you've been following me for a while, I talk about the nervous system, and to the nervous system or to our primal brain, same is safe and different is dangerous. So it's going to be 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And this is with support. Our nervous system is going to go along kicking and screaming that it does not want to change. Because while maybe, in my example, leaving that first marriage it took an enormous amount of support, of energy, of time. And it was really the best thing for me. There was absolutely a part of my brain, and still continuing on for a few years after, that was like, yeah, but you didn't die. Right? And that's that primal brain's voice. It's like that meme, but did you die? Like, no, I didn't die. No, my ex-husband didn't put his hands on me like other previous relationships had. I'm a domestic violence survivor. But it still sucked. And it still wasn't good. It still wasn't great. I was still being emotionally and psychologically abused. But my primal brain is like, yeah, that marriage wasn't great, but he didn't put his hands on you. And my ex-husband would remind me, well, I don't hit you. I'm not out drinking. So what's the big deal, right? And there's a part of my primal brain that's like, yeah, what's the big deal? You're not dead. So let's just keep on going with the way that things have been going. So our primal brain, just in my example, sharing with that, doesn't like change. And that's why support when we go into that action stage of change is so key. As we maintain the action and start to implement the behavior over a period of time, the research says it's about 3 to 6 months, we move into the maintenance stage of change. So we start to shift our identity and how we see ourselves as somebody who is healing, who's a warrior, who's in recovery, as somebody who, has shifted from that identity of, where we were at before the change into this new kind of post, change identity, right? And we start to really change things in our lifestyle, our support systems, our environments, to support and the maintenance of the change, okay? For me, when I got into recovery over 16 years ago for my addiction, I was told you only got to change one thing and that's everything. And I was like, oh, that's like a lot to ask for. But over that first year of my sobriety, it was a gradual process of letting go of those old friends and those old places I used to hang out and those old limiting beliefs and mindsets, the way I talked about myself, and letting go of, resentment, letting go of shame. There was so much change that happened in that first year to where I started to see myself as a recovered person, right? And then there is a stage of change called relapse or recycle. I call it spiralic healing because sometimes we will, slip up and maybe literally like relapse on a substance, or maybe we think we're doing great and then we get into a relationship that's not really healthy again, or we have been setting boundaries with our parents and really good at holding the boundaries, and then one day we're just really overwhelmed from work, and then we talk to a parent and we just totally let them walk all over us and let those boundaries be crossed. This doesn't mean that you're failing. These are new lessons, right? They're opportunities to say, okay, where do I need to shore up my support? How can my nervous system continue to be more resourced so I don't kind of collapse back into these old patterns or these old behaviors or these old ways of being? So I use the example of when we are in a kind of reactive pattern of behavior. So let's use the behavior of people pleasing or fawning, which is part of that dorsal vagal shutdown trauma response. That literally is wired into our brain. We have this neural pathway in our brain that when somebody gets too loud or somebody pushes us, or we feel like somebody's disappointed in us or upset with us, we collapse and then we fawn and we people please. Like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. Or no, it's fine, I'll do that. And all of a sudden we're stretching ourselves too thin. We're saying yes when we really want to say no. We're not holding our boundaries. We're not honoring our truth. We're, self-abandoning in that moment because we're trying to stay safe. So let's say that you have this pathway. Give me some hearts if any of you relate to being a fawner or a people pleaser, and because that's how you survive childhood, and it's something that you are working on healing in your adult life. So let's say that is kind of that neural pathway. And if you think about like a river that's been around for a really long time, the river that has the water flowing down it for a really long time is going to be very wide and very deep. And let's imagine that the water is energy or emotion. So the more it flows down this neural pathway, the more and more time that we've had to fawn and people please, and I'm seeing some hearts, yes, the easier it is to react under stress when we're not regulated, right? Or when we feel overwhelmed, or it's somebody in authority or someone we care about, whatever it might be, to kind of go down that old river. And we've got this new neural pathway or new river that we were all born with, of not fawning and people pleasing, but asserting ourselves and standing in our truth and holding our ground and being connected to our truth and being able to express that. We're all born with this potential to communicate and express that in some way. But that river is like a little dried old creek bed, and there hasn't been any water or energy flowing down it for a long time. So we want to stop going down the people-pleasing river and start going into the asserting ourself river and holding our boundary. We have to build a dam, right? We build a dam and we want to redirect the water, which is like the energy, the emotions, down this new river. And the dam is things like self-regulating tools, grounding tools, having a therapist or a coach or a positive support system, having actual physical and literal safety. If you are struggling financially and worried about keeping the lights on, it's going to be really hard to maintain new change if you're like in literal survival mode. This is why we just can't like love and light and outthink our way out of every problem for folks who are actually in literal survival situations right now. So safety, connection, all these things are part of the dam. And then when that impulse comes down, when that water starts to flow of, oh, I've set a boundary and somebody's pushing back, or I said no, and I can see in someone's face that they're disappointed or that they're upset with me, I have that dam in place of that safety and those resources that help me not go down that river of people pleasing. It goes down this new river of self-assertion, of speaking my truth, of maintaining and holding that boundary. And sometimes, like I said, if we are having a lot of stress, if we aren't resourced, if we don't have enough support, that water will start to flow, that energy will start to flow of that like trigger, and it'll break through the dam. And we'll all of a sudden see ourselves fawning or people pleasing again. Just in this example, it could be we relapse and drink again, or we get into an unhealthy relationship again, or whatever it is, the thing that you're trying to change. And that is okay. It happens. That is part of the process of change. So that's part of that relapse, recycle, or as I call it, spiralic healing, because it's an opportunity for us to look at, okay, what do I need to do to shore up this dam? Do I need more support? Do I need to go back to therapy? Do I actually like need to move out of my living situation and get away from my toxic roommate who like stresses me the fuck out every day? Like, what do I need to do to shore up this dam to help support me actually changing and becoming this person that I'm trying to grow to be, to help me maintain the change that's healthy for my lifestyle that I'm trying to make. It's not just an inside thing. We also need safety, community to think about our environment, our spirituality, and our connections. So at any time, we may kind of have that, we might be in maintenance, trucking along, and then something happens and that dam breaks and we go back into that old pathway, that literal neural pathway in the brain with the old behavior might get reactivated, and we may cycle back into a previous stage of change. We might come back into being pre-contemplative of like, yeah, maybe it wasn't that big of a deal. Like, and we might come back into contemplative of, I think there's a problem, but I'm struggling with feelings of hope that I can change, or I'm struggling with feelings of not being worthy of the change. We can go back into preparation of, okay, well, I got to figure out like what I did, or what I missed, or where else I can get support, and doing research, right? Or we can go right back into action of, oh, nope, that didn't work. I need to go back into my self-help meetings, or I need to go, reach back out to my therapist, or I need to, make a change to this living environment, or break it off with this person because I'm seeing all these red flags and I'm not going to get back in a situation like this again. And so the process and stages of change, if you're just joining, I just did a whole long 40-minute workshop on this. It is not always linear. Change happens long before we kind of physically can see it, or other people might notice it, but that doesn't mean you're not changing. That doesn't mean you're not in the process of change, even if it's just up here or in here right now. And if you're ready to move into action, I have a 4-week group, the Conscious Relationship Roadmap, if you're ready to take action on breaking free from cycles of unhealthy relationships. So check that out in the link in my bio. And if not with me, y'all, I hope you just find somebody to support you and to work with. In the beginning, I couldn't afford therapy, so I went to, 12-step. And I found a sponsor that gave me that safety and that co-regulation that I needed for, $1 a meeting until I could find and afford to go to therapy. And then I, went to yoga classes and spiritual book studies and like all of the things to shore up my support system. When it's not linear, I feel like I'm backtracking, but I know it's part of the process, like you said. Absolutely. So when we do see ourselves backtracking, what we can do is meet that with kindness, with compassion, and just realize that, oh, my nervous system is just really working hard to keep me safe right now. My nervous system is just really working hard to try to protect me right now. My nervous system is just feeling, really overwhelmed because it only has evidence that this old way of being is the only way that I can be. And I'm going to take small, consistent action to show my nervous system, because we have to show that subconscious or that primal part of our brain, not just tell it, that I can take action towards this new direction and it's not going to kill me, right? 12-step programs are available internationally. Again, if you have, there's Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. There's also Codependence Anonymous. There is Al-Anon if you have a family member who's an addict or an alcoholic or were raised by one. There's Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Parents Anonymous, which I love that program. They do a lot of inner child work in that program. So you can Google these programs and search online meetings, and there are Zoom meetings like all day, every day that you can find. All right, everybody. Well, I hope this was supportive. I went through the entire stages of change model as outlined by Miller and Rodnick's Motivational Interviewing Psychology Theory. This was basically a whole college psych class in an Instagram Live. I will be posting it. I hope that you are able to identify where you are on the spectrum of change, that you found some tools or some tips from this to help you move along that process of change. And most of all, that you always meet yourself with compassion wherever you're at in this process of change. And if you are ready to move into action and get some support, I have 5 spots left for my new Conscious Relationships Roadmap group program. Link is in my bio to check that out. All right, everybody, sending you so much love. Please take care of yourselves after listening to this. Drink some water. Try not to rush into the next thing. Let's all take a deep breath. And just thank yourself for showing up for this. You are so welcome. All right, sending y'all lots of love. We'll talk soon.